Alright, guys. The next section that we are going to take a look at here is the nervous system. This is a particularly complicated part of our anatomy. Nervous system has very little understanding, but we do have an understanding of a lot of big picture concepts. So what we're going to do, we're going to break it down into the simple components that you need to be familiar with. Now, like our skeletal system, the nervous system is broken up into two distinct sections. So if you recall from the skeletal system, we have our axial skeleton and our appendicular skeleton. So axial is our trunk, where our appendicular is our arms and our legs. The nervous system is broken into the central nervous system, labeled in purple here, and the peripheral nervous system, that is colored in yellow. The peripheral originates from the central at the spinal cord, and there are some cranial nerves at the base of the brain where some of the peripheral nerves come out of. There are a wide variety of functions that the nervous system controls. So it acts as a sensory receptor. So the nervous system can detect changes in temperature. So our body knows when it's hot, it knows when it's cold, it detects pain. So if we happen to injure ourselves, we know where that pain is, generally speaking. It also controls our emotions, our responses to stress, responses to relaxation, and those you should definitely go into your textbook and review some of those changes that the body experiences. And we'll talk about the fight and flight and rest and digest responses in a little bit. But to start, just know nervous system detects changes in the body. It's responsible for our conscious thinking and processing of information. And the list goes on and on and on. And that's what makes the nervous system so complex. So, looking at the central nervous system, the two main components are the brain and the spinal cord. And we're going to zoom in at the brain real quick. So this is the controlling organ of our body. This is our command center. Again, we're processing our thoughts. If we're thinking about going to the refrigerator to grab some food, we consciously think these things to ourselves. And the cerebrum is responsible for processing a lot of these thoughts and associations. And the cerebrum is considered a subdivision of the brain. We also have the cerebellum here, located in the back. The main function of this guy is for balance. So if we have damage to this particular region, we would probably struggle with our coordination and fine motor movements. it a good example is someone who is under the influence of alcohol. Alcohol affects the cerebellum significantly. And if you see someone who might be a little bit too intoxicated, they might be stumbling and they really can't walk in a straight line or be coordinated in any way, shape, or form. That is because the alcohol has affected their cerebellum. People can also experience strokes in this area, and we have excessive amount of damage and neuronal death that can result in the same thing, lack of coordination. Then we have our brainstem here. This is probably the most vital component of the brain. It is the most protected region, and for a good reason. Within our brainstem, we have the control centers for our heart rate and our breathing rate. So our respiratory and our cardiovascular centers. And if there is any damage to the brainstem, then it is likely that you may not be able to survive such an injury. So the brainstem it's deep, it's surrounded by the various other structures of the brain, it's protected by the skull, then parts of our spinal column. So the big thing that you need to know about the brainstem is the cardiovascular and respiratory centers reside in there. It can be broken into multiple subsections that you can definitely look at on your own. Now, as I mentioned, there's a lot of complex functions that go throughout the cerebrum. We keep our memories here. We associate sights and sounds with these memories, smells. When we learn certain smells, there's regions of the cerebrum that light up. For you guys, don't focus too much on the specific regions of the cerebrum because it can be broken down into the frontal lobe, the occipital lobe. We have our parietal lobes up here, and they're all a little bit different. So just know we have association areas, thoughts, conscious thinking, and higher level function. Then we have our spinal column here that starts at the end of the brainstem, and it continues down the spinal column. And we have all of these nerves that kind of start to branch out of the spinal column to the various different parts of the body. These are going to serve to cause us to move, cause us to detect certain stimuli, again, like pain, temperature, where we're going. So making sure we're putting our foot on solid ground. If you feel like the ground is soft or it's sinking, that's your nervous system feeling and sensing that and telling you there is not so much solid ground underneath your foot. There are also unconscious things that occur. There's nerves that start to go to our digestive system. So when we become hungry, there are functions that we don't necessarily control very well. And not that we don't control them, we just don't consciously control them. And we're going to break that down on the next slide, because that's where things kind of get murky when it comes to the nervous system.